Okay. Um, do you guys both agree that 1 Corinthians 15 is the earliest written reference to the resurrection?
Well, it's not the earliest written reference because it's in First Corinthians, but it is the earliest reference. It'd be like the earliest creed to it, and it was an oral
Okay.
creed before it was written down.
I guess what I mean is like the first reference to it that actually like explains. Can you pull up the verse like or the chapter like the beginning? I'm not sure how to like if you go to like Bible Hub or something.
First Corinthians 15.
Yeah, like just the first few verses of it.
Yeah. For now, I will remind you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, in which you stand, and by which you are saved, if you hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believe in vain. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scripture, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James and to all the apostles. That's basically where we
Yeah.
think the creed cuts off.
Yeah, that's the relevant part. And so like it seems to me like what would you derive from that is the evidence that Paul is giving for the resurrection there.
So the evidence I would say is we have an early belief, very early on, that Jesus died, was buried, and that he physically walked out of the grave. So he was raised on the third day. And then he started appearing to people. So first to Peter, then to the 12, then he appeared to a large group of more than 500. He also appeared to James and all the apostles. So that would include the 12 and others as well.
And but by appeared, he doesn't actually describe what appeared means there, right?
Correct. He does not describe it in detail, no, but we can infer from that they would have seen a risen Jesus, because that which died is that what was buried, and that which was buried is what was raised, which would be his physical body.
Did Paul see Jesus's physical body?
I would say yes, based on what I understand in Acts. Yeah.
So
Wait, can
he
can I
met
ask
the
you?
physically
Can,
resurrected Jesus before he went to heaven?
wait, I want to ask a clarifying question, just on the off chance we might accidentally be talking past each other. Do you know the difference between like Christians that take a minimal facts approach to the resurrection versus kind of like a more max data case?
I think the minimal facts is something that like Habermas talks about, where there's just certain facts that scholars agree on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
But when I've looked at maximal case, it seems like it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems to me that the maximal case is just basically endorsing inerrancy when it comes to everything about the resurrection and the empty tomb. I don't really see a difference there.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt right there, because I hear that as somebody that talks about the max data case all the time. I hear that all the time, and people like me, Lydia McGrew, Eric Manning, we have to constantly tell people, no, we actually do allow for good faith errors and stuff like that in our modeling of the Gospels. So, like, why do you think that we're endorsing inerrancy or anything like that there? Because like it's the model that we propose isn't a theological one.
Well, what I'm trying to do is if we go back to 1 Corinthians 15 for a moment, it's according to most scholars that's the earliest written reference where he mentions the witnesses and himself in the list. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a verified firsthand source. It's by Paul himself. And nobody disputes that, not even like Bart Ehrman or any of the skeptical scholars dispute that.
Hmm.
They agree that Paul wrote this letter. And so if you contrast that with the Gospels, a lot of skeptical scholars or, I don't know, secular scholars or whatever you want to call them, they disagree over who wrote the Gospels, but they all agree that Paul wrote this letter. So I have to insert that because I don't want to just pull the scholarly consensus card, but I think that's relevant because we only have time to study so much, and if scholars agree on one thing and they disagree on another, for a historical debate purpose, it seems to go with the scholarly view that all scholars agree Paul wrote this letter, whereas they disagree about the Gospels. And that gives me pause to endorse to not wholly endorse what the Gospels say or who they were written by.
So I want to address all that you just said, but the problem is that doesn't actually answer my question, which is how does any of that tell you that people that endorse the max data case and like historical reportage model of the Gospels are presupposing inerrancy or something like that?
Well, I guess if you presuppose the maximal case, can you give me an instance of something in the Gospels pertaining to the resurrection or the empty tomb that did not happen as described in the Gospels?
What? Let's just say hypothetically, I don't.
So
Then
everything
what?
everything in the Gospels pertaining to the resurrection and the empty tomb is true.
Inerrancy is a doctrine about the Bible wholesale, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if I say there are no historical errors in the Gospels, does that mean I'm an inerrantist?
Well, I don't see, for all practical purposes, I don't see a difference. But I kind of want to get back to 1 Corinthians 15.
Well, let's get back. Yeah, let's get back to 1 Corinthians.
I'm going somewhere with this. I think we'd all enjoy this.
All right, let's just go. So make the argument for 1 Corinthians you want to get to. Just make the argument. And then.
So going back to 1 Corinthians 15, Paul puts his experience in line with the others. He says he appeared to him. And I just asked Mike if Paul saw Jesus' physical body, but the experience in Paul's letters is still not described as what he saw. He says he had a revelation in Galatians. That's Galatians 1:16. He says I saw Jesus in 1 Corinthians 9:1, but he doesn't describe it. And then in 1 Corinthians 15:8, he says Jesus appeared to me. Now, if you look up that Greek word for appeared, sometimes translated as was seen, is it true that word does not necessarily indicate the physical appearance of a person?
Yeah, that word by itself. Yeah, that word by itself would not indicate that. Yeah.
Now, how can you convince me that word by itself, plus whatever else is in 1 Corinthians 15, necessarily indicates a pre-ascension physical appearance of a body?
So yeah, let's go back to what we talked about with the creed. So the creed includes more details. It says Jesus died, was buried, and then was raised. And then he appeared. So we're following, there's a sequence it follows. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. Jesus died, was buried. What's buried? The body. Was raised. Whatever was buried was raised. So the body then was raised. And then the appearances we would expect are in conjunction with that. So if that which was buried is that which was raised, we would expect that which was raised is that which appeared. And so it would follow that when he appeared to these people, we would expect it to be physical. And then, of course, other later texts like the Gospels, as well as the early sermons and Acts, are in agreement with that as well.
So, but Paul says he appeared to me. It's the same sequence. So did Paul have a pre-ascension appearance of Jesus?
No.
So it doesn't follow that died, buried, raised, appeared necessarily indicates a pre-ascension physical appearance.
Well,
because Paul places his post-ascension appearance in the list.
That's fine. So think about what we're doing here. Let me give you an analogy here. Okay. So if I said, yeah, I talked to you, I saw you. Let's say your camera was on. I saw you. I also saw my wife today. I saw my parents. I just gave you a list of people I saw. Does that mean the way I saw all of these people is necessarily going to be the same? No, because I saw you through a computer. Just giving a list of things that appeared doesn't mean those appearances all have to happen in the exact same way.
Yeah, I agree with that, but you still need to establish that these were veridical appearances of a resurrected body. And I haven't seen anything in 1 Corinthians 15 that does that. Well, because the word by itself and the sequence can indicate post-ascension appearances, and post-ascension appearances can be ambiguous, visions and revelations and the like. And so
we don't make a case just from 1 Corinthians that we can prove the resurrection. This is just, we use that as data. Okay, so we know they appeared to groups of people, But then we're going to use things like I mentioned, like the early sermons in Acts. We're going to use data from the Gospels, like I did when I gave the presentation at the start of this. We're going to use other data that we can use. This is just, First Corinthians is primarily used to show that they believe Jesus physically rose very early on and that he also appeared to multiple people.
Yeah, I have a video because you specifically were talking about 1 Corinthians 15. I think it's, did Jesus really raise from the dead or something like that? And I go through an argument because I'm assuming you're going to make the argument that like 1 Corinthians 15:39, and I think it's through 40 something, talks about a spiritual resurrection or something like that, right?
I know that there are interpretations for that. I'm kind of on the fence about what Paul believed. I'm not really like,
Okay.
I don't think he believed in the resurrection of a spirit, because he does use the word body. He definitely uses
Okay,
the word body.
great.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't know. The thing that I normally see in these debates is that they sometimes argue, hey, he believed in a body, therefore they saw the body, but that doesn't follow, because we've just established that post-ascension appearances were accepted.
Right. So here's how the maximalist is going to use Paul, right? Because for me, the First Corinthians creed is just showing that there's an early belief that was widely attested in the early Christian communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
From there, we can go to like Acts 9, Acts 22, Acts 26, and we can just see what Paul says, right? Paul gives the occasion of his account. So he's Paul, like in 9:2, 22:5, 26:12. Paul was traveling to Damascus to extradite arrested believers to Jerusalem for trial. I'm reading some slides I had for a debate right now. That's all. He gives the time in 22:6, 26:13. It occurred about noon or midday. He gives the place. I'm going to stop giving a bunch of these references just to save time. It occurred on the road from Jerusalem to Damascus, near Damascus. He describes the appearance. A light from heaven flashed around Paul. He describes the reaction. Paul and his companions fell to the ground, apparently in reverence. And he describes the initial dialogue. Who are you, Lord? And Jesus replies, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. There's only slight variation in the summaries that exist between the three dialogue memories. He describes the Lord's command, get up and go to the city, you will be told what you must do, and the aftermath. Paul is blinded by the intensity of the light, and he has to be led by hand to Damascus, and he's fast for 3 days. And other people are attesting to what happened to Paul and claim to have seen something here too. Now, I know you probably want to jump in there. What I'm going to say from here then is, because you're probably going to want to say something like, okay, so yeah, Paul's not explicitly admitting to saying he saw the physical resurrected body or something like that. And that's fine. We can actually just grant that, because from there, what we can say then is something like this. Well, Paul's persecuting Christians. He knows that they believe the physical resurrection of Jesus, right? And then he goes, okay, I'm going to become a Christian and affirm the physical resurrection of Jesus as well, based off this experience I just had. So you can inductively support through Paul the physical resurrection of Jesus, because not only through his encounters with previous Christians, but also his own writings in 1 Corinthians 15, he clearly believes there's a physical resurrected Jesus.
Yeah, I think I can grant, for the sake of argument, that he believed Jesus was physically resurrected, but there still is a dispute. He didn't write Acts. That's Luke, or the author of Luke and Acts wrote Acts, and scholars dispute the reliability of those sources. And so,
we can get into the arguments on this stuff. And I think like Luke wrote Acts. I think the author of Acts was a traveling companion of Paul.
But but let's not get too far off topic here. Let's get kind of back onto that. So like, what I'm confused about is like, what are you offering up as an alternative to the resurrection itself? Like, what are you trying to posit happened?
Well, I guess, I mean, if I were trying to give a full explanation of what happened, I'm not sure I'm able to do that, but I'm thinking of like, I guess I'm trying to frame the debate as an argument for the resurrection. And it seems to me, in order to establish that a resurrection occurred, then these people, the only way to confirm that happened, at least in the first century, was to have actually seen him. Like he died and he needed to be alive again. But in the earliest reference we have, we don't know what type of appearances these were. And so it doesn't give evidence, or at least not convincing evidence or more probable evidence, that they actually saw the dead guy alive again. And you have to appeal to the later sources to fill in the gap, which the later sources are disputed. And so that's the problem there. But I guess, is it okay to agree that the earliest source by itself, this is 1 Corinthians 15, is not sufficient to establish that they actually saw a physical person?
I would disagree. And the reason I would disagree is because, again, I go through that sequence of 1 Corinthians. And you're going to get basically the idea that, again, he died, then was buried, and that was raised, and then that appeared. And even if we exclude Paul at the end, because, again, he's just listing his appearances alongside them, okay? Even if we exclude Paul at the end, whatever was raised is what also appeared, and that would have to be a physical appearance.
Well, I mean, I guess I would depend on what you mean by physical. Like if he appeared in a blinding light, like Acts says, that's a physical phenomena, but it's not seeing an actual body. So I'm not sure how. Like I think I would just have to pull out the post ascension part, because the sequence that he gives is the same for each one. He says died, buried, raised, appeared. He does not say the other guys saw him before he ascended to heaven and then I saw him after. He doesn't make that distinction.
Right.
Yeah. It's
but
a short little
in the same chapter, he talks about what the resurrection body is like, right?
Well,
and I would argue once you understand the Jewish nature of what Paul is doing, it's clearly about a physical resurrection. I mean the seed analogy in of itself should tell you that it's of the same kind.
Yeah, I'm not saying he believed in a spiritual resurrection. I'm saying he may have not seen a body, which is not the same thing. Like you seem to be arguing.
Well, I mean,
over
again,
the
even if
physicality
we
but you're shifting the argument right now, right? And I don't think you're doing it on purpose, right? The 1 Corinthians 15 passage, right? Your objection is, well, you can't really prove from that alone that this is about a physical appearance or anything like that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And
that needs to be shown.
Paul's not talking about just his own experience, though, right? He's speaking on the behalf of the community and the community testimony.
And here's the
Right?
important part. Even if we grant that Paul experienced Jesus differently, he didn't actually see a physical Jesus. He's just listing appearances. He's not saying a list of appearances is not saying they're all qualitatively the same. He's giving you a quantity of appearances. He's not telling you the quality of the appearances. So, like, again, it's like if I spoke to you and I also spoke to my own mother, I'm giving a list of people I spoke to. I'm not saying that the nature of the way we spoke is more intimate in certain ways or not. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So just a mere list does not point in that direction.
Well, it seems to me that the data of the appearances is the only way to establish that a resurrection occurred. But if the data of the appearances in the source is ambiguous, and it seems that it is, then the skeptic has no evidential justification for believing in the resurrection.
Okay, well, hold up. You said here's something you did say, that you said that Paul saw Jesus post ascension. Where are you getting that idea from?
That's the Orthodox standard Christian belief. I'm making an internal critique. I'm making the internal critique of what you guys believe.
But exactly, you're going on
that's what you believe,
data. You're going on, but that's my point, though. That's what I'm trying to. You're saying we can't include later data like the Gospels because they're disputed, but you're also drawing from those later sources to say that his appearance was post ascension. So why can't we also draw from them?
I believe he said Acts, and then that's when we started talking about Acts. I stuck with 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Corinthians 9:1, and Galatians 1:16 is a revelation. Those are the three sources.
We're just going on 1 Corinthians, the earliest data.
Right.
What was raised is what they saw, and then Paul puts himself on that list. If we're just looking at just that, what's that?
The verb for appear does not necessarily indicate the physical appearance of a person. You need to establish that it does.
And that's what I keep trying to do. I keep saying, like, if you look at the full creed in context, that which was buried is that which was raised, and that is what was appeared. So it would logically follow that. And then
we don't
Paul
know
goes
if
on,
he's appearing from heaven. We don't know if he's appearing from heaven or pre-heaven, because he talks about Jesus being in heaven in his letters.
Follow the logic here. If we just have, if all the New Testament disappeared, we just had 1 Corinthians 15.
Right.
Look at what we have. We have, again, that which was buried is that which was raised, that which was appeared. That implies it was the body. Then Paul goes on after this to explain what the resurrected body is. It just logically follows they're seeing a body.
No, because the body, what follows is that they believed the body was raised. It doesn't follow that anybody inspected a tomb and found it empty. It doesn't follow that they physically saw a body with their eyes. All that follows is that they believed in a physical resurrection. But without the verification, then there's no evidence.
Okay, but that's all we're establishing, though, at this point. We're establishing just what they claim to have seen. That's what the creed does. And by that, they would, and even like Bart Ehrman and Paula Fredrickson would read that what they saw convinced them of a resurrected Jesus. Therefore, they think they see the actual body walking around. That's what the creed is basically showing us.
The other thing I forgot to mention is that you'll notice in 1 Corinthians, I believe it's 15:3-4, the belief is actually said to be first and foremost based on the scriptures.
It says in accordance with the scriptures.
In accordance with, so that means that they're getting some sort of interpretation from the scriptures and that bolsters their belief. That's mentioned before any appearances. So it's mentioned before the appearances.
I think we're reading a little too much into that. It's not saying that because the scriptures, because again, what does he cite as evidence? The appearances itself.
Yes. Well, that he cites the scriptures and then the appearances to bolster that belief. What I'm saying is that it's possible, since they believed they were living, like in an end time eschatological period in history, right? Like they were thinking like, hey, the end times are coming, and the end times just happened to be when the resurrection was going to occur. And then all of a sudden Jesus dies. You can see how that some of them would put together, oh yeah, that guy Jesus was preaching about it. Maybe he's resurrected, but and then they turn to the scriptures to like find confirmation of their belief that they were leaning towards.
Now we're going outside of what the creed says. It doesn't say that. It says the reason they believed, or what it's basically showing us is the reason they believed because he appeared to them. It's not because they went to the scriptures. And this kind of actually works against the case, because if they were to use that, they go to places like Daniel, where it says the resurrected body was shining like a star. And we don't see them saying that, anything like that. So if that's what they're using as their basis, we should see them quoting it or using that. But the creed is based on the appearances that they saw after the body was raised. That's the basis of the creed as the establishment of the faith.
Okay. Well, where do you guys think we should go from here? I mean, I've enjoyed what we discussed so far.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much time.
What I want from you is I want an alternative. So if Jesus didn't if Jesus didn't resurrect, what is the better explanation of all the available data that we have?
Well, so I guess I would, if I go with, I guess I would encourage the listeners who are listening to this to look up that Greek word ophthe that's translated as appeared. And you'll see that like when it's used in the Septuagint, it's used for a lot of, not necessarily physical appearances. It's used for visions and dreams and such. And I'm not saying that it always refers to those types of things, but the fact that it does makes the appearances in 1 Corinthians 15 ambiguous. But the resurrection case can't be ambiguous if you're trying to use it as evidence. And I think that's the defeater for the argument, which I want to emphasize here.
It's hardly a defeater.
But again, you guys have the burden of proof to show that it means a physical appearance.
Okay, but no,
you have the burden of proof.
Paul, in the very same chapter, again, argues that the resurrection body is a physical body.
Again, you're conflating the belief in a physical resurrection with the appearances, and those aren't.
This is what I was trying to say that you keep flip-flopping on. Okay,
we can.
No,
I'm arguing about the appearances. I'm arguing about the appearances, and you're diverting to the body. The appearances are what's important.
Do you not think that? Okay, let me ask you this. Let's just suppose Paul did not have physical resurrection experience. It was just a light. Does that mean that we must infer that he thinks that everybody else's testimony about their own experiences regarding the resurrected Christ are also all spiritual light figures?
No, I'm coming to the conclusion they're all ambiguous because of that verb. I'm not saying.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That is just ridiculous because again, later on, Paul. Hold on. There's a distinction between the question, "What did Paul experience?" and the question of what did Paul believe regarding the resurrection body?
Yeah,
yes or no?
That's what I was just saying.
Okay, cool.
The
So
belief in the physical
Paul,
resurrection is
Paul,
completely separate from the appearance.
so Paul, when in 1 Corinthians 15, the creed is speaking on behalf of the community, not just himself, right? And so, do you really want to say when he says that he appeared to us and stuff like that, he's talking about?
We don't have any description of what appeared to them though. Like if the 500 just thought they saw like a Virgin Mary appearance of a figure floating around,
yeah.
that's
Now
not
you're
evidence
just
of a physical resurrection, is it?
So
we don't have a description.
Paul believes in a physical resurrection, but experienced a non-physical experience. And so somehow that gets you to saying, well, we just don't know. And this is just because why? You think that no other evidence is applicable?
No, I'm just sticking with the earliest source. I'm not. We haven't even gotten to the Gospels yet. We can, but I'd prefer to establish.
So you're okay. So this is a really trivial argument then, right? Because all you're really saying is, based off this one word in the 1 Corinthians Creed, apart from any context and other mitigating data, we don't really know what happened.
Well, the context you provided is not sufficient to demonstrate a physical appearance, which is what you need.
Yes, it is. We did, because again,
no, it isn't, because the appearances can be pre or post.
I will explain it again. I will explain it again. That which died is that which was buried, which is a body, and then that which was buried is that which was raised. That which was raised is what appeared. So it logically follows the best explanation of what this creed is telling us is that they saw the physical body of Jesus after it was raised. So regardless of the word appeared, we've already granted that can be used for visions and dreams and whatnot. That is in the context of the earlier part of the creed, showing that what appeared to them was a body.
So if they were all post-ascension visions from heaven, you would still believe that Jesus was raised?
I would say that's what the creed is still showing, that they saw a body.
But the mode of seeing is ambiguous in regards to exactly how he was experienced, though, right?
No, because it would still involve the resurrected Jesus. That's what they saw.
But we don't know if it's prior to an ascension or after. If it's after, then I don't know.
Doesn't matter. It's still the resurrected Jesus.
Well,
I mean, Jesus, isn't it?
Okay, why would Paul believe? Why would Paul believe in? Because I also went on quite a little bit of monologue explaining how the maximalist is going to use Paul. So why would Paul believe in a physical resurrection?
Due to background beliefs about how they thought the resurrection would take place, but I think the background beliefs don't.
And so Paul's just speaking on the behalf of the community when he talks about a physical resurrected body and all this other stuff.
He's speaking to Greeks in that letter, so I don't know what their knowledge of general resurrection was like. I think they actually reject the general resurrection if you pay attention to the context. They believe in Jesus' resurrection, but they do not. They are skeptical of the general resurrection of all believers, and that's in verses 12 through 20, I believe, because
we're second. Yeah. So was Paul a Jewish person, somebody that believed in like Hellenistic conceptions of apotheosis and stuff like that, or was he a Jewish person that believed in physical resurrection?
Well, he was Jewish, but the context of the letter is written to Greeks, so he's using language such as spiritual body, soma pneumaticon.
Yeah,
he's using all that,
and that's helping my point, right?
Well,
because he later on and elaborates using that language, referencing a Deuteronomic matrix, to argue that the resurrection body is physical.
It doesn't follow that the physically resurrected Jesus appeared prior to going to heaven, though, and that's what you need to establish in the context of the creed.
Jordan, we're still doing this thing. That you're getting the ascension from later texts. If you're getting the ascension from later texts, you're using them as authoritative on things that happen.
No,
why can't we do the same?
I need to find the references. Paul talks about Jesus being in heaven. He talks about it.
Fine.
So he's in heaven. He's in heaven per Paul's letters.
It's still a physical body, though, according to that which was raised. It came out of the grave.
How do you see a physical body in heaven? How is that possible? Does he come down like literally? We missed the second coming, and he physically appeared in the sky.
I mean, like, that is a possibility. And, or, you know, the idea of the unseen realm that Michael Heiser talks about, this idea that there's an unseen realm around us, and then like the curtain opens and we see in it sometimes, like with the appearance of angels, that is also as well. But you still need to connect the appearances to what they actually saw, which would be the physical Jesus raised. And now, if we're just going on the earliest evidence, that's what they saw. If we're going to use later evidence like the ascension that we're going to get from Acts, then we also need to include what he says about that.
Yeah. So, but it seems to me that the argument, if you're going to say that they saw a body, it only follows that they saw the body if you can show that these were pre-ascension normal mode of experiences. And
okay,
I don't think you've given an argument for that.
Does the creed exclude that?
I think that's a shifting of the burden of proof. I think
no, it's not. Okay, here, let me ask you a different question.
You
then,
need
Jordan.
to show they're not ambiguous. That's what you need to show, because you're saying
that's not what we need to show. Jordan,
you're saying the evidence should be convincing to a skeptic, right?
Jordan, here's the question. Is the probability that Paul is talking about a physical resurrection body, given the evidence, higher than the probability that Paul is not talking about a physical resurrection, given the evidence?
You've just reverted back to the bodily resurrection when we're talking about the nature of the appearances. You need to make your argument.
Answer his question.
Just answer my question. What is Paul talking about?
I just did. You're shifting the argument to the nature of the resurrection.
What? Okay, it sounds like you don't understand why that's really pertinent then, because again,
no, I do. I just realized that you're trying to shift it from what the important point is, because it doesn't matter what type of resurrection they believed in. It matters how they saw the resurrected person.
I understand that. So why would Paul be saying that there's a resurrection body and trying to represent other people? Like in the very same chapter, right? Paul is talking about how Jesus appeared to many people. That word is ambiguous. But then later on, he talks about what the resurrection body is, which is a physical thing.
But that all falls apart if they're appearances from heaven.
Okay.
Because
do we have any reason to support the idea that all of these appearances that Paul's talking about are all from heaven?
Yes, because Paul includes the appearance to him in the list and says the exact same terminology.
We are going in circles.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Listen, we already addressed that.
You just asked me and I gave you a reason.
Thanks for coming, man. We appreciate it. We're not going to keep going in circles, but man, okay.
This is why I wanted to get outside of 1 Corinthians 15 and try to get to Acts and actually just start giving gospel reliability arguments, right? Because all this guys is good. And then
he's like, oh yeah, the ascension. Yeah, okay, well we can use the ascension then. No,
right. But the moment I start trying to get into it, he doesn't want to talk about gospel reliability.
Right. We can't talk about that because that's later sources, but we can trust them for the ascension. And by the way, I'm not going to actually give you a better explanation for the resurrection. I'm just going to say you can't prove it. But also, according to Jordan, we can only use 1 Corinthians, the creed of 1 Corinthians 15, but he's allowed to use the ascension in Acts, other parts of 1 Corinthians. The double standard, man. And then, oh, by the way, all he needs really is the word appeared in Greek. Yes, that's all I need to show that this isn't like, man, get off my stage.